question on recomposition. Tricky. Talking about lots of different variables at play with recomposition. I see a ton of this when my clients first start working with me, in the first month especially, and it's really hard to diagnose, but that's also why I have people take so many measures. I take a body weight measurement, a waist circumference measurement, and a measure around the hip circumference, the biggest point, like basically the biggest part of your butt. And everyone's trends are going to be different, but it's hard to quantify when you are going through a recomposition phase, or essentially dropping body fat while gaining muscle mass at about the same rate, because the scale doesn't move hardly at all. Not anything that you can actually discern for sure. So with those circumference measurements, it starts to give me a really good idea of what's going on. If I've got someone that started working with me at 150 pounds and their waist circumference measurement was 33 and their hip circumference was 36, let's say it was a male, and their waist circumference starts dropping, but they're not losing weight. It goes down to 32 and then to 31, but the hip circumference is staying up. So we've only got one measure that's dropping. What in the world could be happening? Well, if you're 150 pounds and your waist continues to drop like that and your hip area stays up, for men specifically, that pattern is very common when you're going through a recomposition phase, because your glutes are growing and you also don't store as much fat on your glutes, typically as a male. And when the waist is shrinking, typically men store more belly fat. So we can hopefully discern, if you're staying the same weight, this circumference where you don't store much fat is staying the same. The circumference where you do store more fat is dropping. Then if you're losing body fat, because we know that's where that generally is, but your weight's staying the same, you're not just losing mass, you're also gaining muscle mass at about the same rate. So that's a context clue for how to keep a good eye on how those things are happening. For females, that trend is a little bit different, because our fat storage predispositions genetically, everybody's going to be different in general, but for females most of the time, if your weight is staying the same and your waist circumference is 32 and your hip circumference is 38, most of the time you'll see both of those measures start dropping down at the same time at about the same rate, because females tend to store body fat around the hips a lot more than men. So we're going to expect that to happen. But if you stay the same weight, these measures are dropping, your overall volume of your body is reducing, but your mass is staying the same. That means you're getting more dense. And we know that muscle tissue is more dense than fat tissue. So we know that you're dropping fat and gaining muscle at about the same rate as well. Now, if you have someone that's more androgynously built, naturally more muscular, especially as females, I've worked with several of those as well, you might actually see a similar trend to the males. And there are plenty of males that I've seen follow the same trend as females because of genetics and where they store their body fat specifically. So you kind of have to do an eyeball test to look at those body types and understand what the odds are of the results that you're seeing actually being what you want to see.